On behalf of Team MRO Digest Forums, we welcome to this webinar, which is going to be conducted on a subject related to technology. In fact, really speaking, technology has become a buzzword. Whether we talk of Russia-Ukraine war, whether we talk of standoff between United States of America and China in context of Taiwan or Indo-Pacific, or any other matter, so to say, we have to also now look at what is the impact of this technology on MRO related activities. Does this make our job simpler, or it is not as simple as it appears? What are the payoffs and options it throws to the land force as well as other sister services of Air Force and Navy? We are also concerned about the technology in a big way in MRO Digest Forum. In fact, our first webinar conducted on 9th November 22 was on a technologically intensive subject, and that was related to 3D printing conducted by Group Captain Ashok Singh from Air Force. Today again, we have come back on a technology related subject, which is going to look at the various nuances, and we shall be covering not only the land forces but the air force as well. To set the tone of today's webinar, we shall now request Lieutenant General Dr. N.B. Singh, who has been the ex-DGME and a very well-known name in the strategic community and the community of thinkers, to give us the keynote address so that we can take on our further deliberations based on that approach. General N.B. sir.
Thank you, Ashok. It's a great privilege for me to be here to deliver this opening talk on a very important subject of MRO and how can it be transformed, especially in the military, using contemporary technologies. Now, before I get down to the areas where we can look at, inserting or using technology, I would like to address a core issue as to why generally you find that within the military, and specifically the militaries under the Commonwealth, you find that there is always the same kind of problem: inadequate attention to the needs of the MRO personnel. It's not the case with more modern armies like the US Armed Forces or the European military. Now, to my mind, I feel that there are three issues which the maintainers in these militaries have not really researched and talked about, because possibly they got a template from the Britishers, and for some time there was kind of an interaction, deep interaction with them by exchange of technical documents and all that. But then last 30 years, I think that linkage also has been cut off, and as a consequence, the military maintainers have been operating in a shell and trying to reinvent the wheel. And at times, every time they have intervened, like Mr. Gupta was mentioning about the transfer of technology, every time an indigenous input is given into it, you end up diluting the whole process or the quality. I mean, that's been my experience also. So first thing was that, the operational significance of MRO, we have never been able to communicate to the warfighter. And since he has a very important decision as far as the funding is concerned, because after all, there is a finite budget and there is a need for modernization, there is a need for logistic requirements like ammunition and things like that. So ultimately, you find all the cuts coming to mostly into the MRO domain. So the operational significance of MRO, we have not been able to communicate. There is no metrics to measure equipment capability in our military. We don't have a concept of system effectiveness. So therefore, the warfighter feels, that okay, whatever is happening is okay, is good enough. It's not going to impact the operational outcome of any combat, which has been proved wrong in this recent war. You all see in the Russia-Ukraine war, it has been proven wrong. You just can't move out equipment from deep freeze and take it out and expect that, yes, it will perform. So that is one. The second is the concept of life cycle systems management. Our acquisition still continues to be on the L1 basis. There is no concern about life cycle costing. And therefore, today, a T-72, which was bought at 50 lakhs in the 90s, you are ending up you're using 8 crores to overhaul it and return it in the same configuration in which it was imported without any technology insertion. So if nobody has thought of technology insertion into the weapon platform, where is the question of using technology into the servicing portion or the maintenance portion of that? So this is the second reason. And of course, at least within the Army, I know for sure that we have never discussed the effect of age, usage, deployment on weapon system capability. If you see, there are huge amount of literature available everywhere where they can measure out, okay, how will the failure take place in the fire control system? How will the turret be impacted? How will the mechanical systems, the power plants, how is the electronics going to fail? In fact, if you go by the US studies, anything beyond 6 years, they say, in a digital system, the number of failures will increase vis-a-vis analogous systems. So, these are things where we have never focused on. We've just been talking about superficial issues, and therefore, the net result is that today, the MRO infrastructure, at least in the Army, is at least 30 years old. Yes, there may be, in penny pockets here and there, some few islands of excellence, but overall you will find that it's in a really bad state. I mean, you continue to use machine tools of the 40s and 50s. So this, I feel that the most important thing for maintainers across the board is to study this impact of age, usage, deployment on the equipment capability, and bring out as to how weapon system effectiveness will deteriorate with passage of time. And therefore, MRO is required. And if MRO is required, then why you need modern MRO infrastructure? Because if the assembly lines, manufacturing lines in India could undergo a huge revamp, if you see the assembly line of Tata Motors 30, 40 years back and go today, or you see that of Mahindra, they have undergone a huge transformation. So if that could happen there, why is it that in the MRO domain it has not happened? So I think this is the major weakness. Now, coming to where all we can use technology, I feel we have that famous 6 levers of sustainment. Each one of them, whether it is the assembly line, the infrastructure portion, whether it is the plant and machinery, whether it is the documentation portion, whether it is the testing and evaluation infrastructure, whether it is skills and competencies, or whether it is the spare parts management, everywhere there is a scope of introducing technology and revamping the whole thing, making it, firstly, operationally effective, and secondly, cost effective. Because I think the biggest drain on our resources is the manpower. And I have read somewhere that vis-a-vis private sector, the public sector cost, the cost of the personnel or human resource wise is about 6 to 8 times more. So when you end up paying so much of your budget into salaries and pensions of your personnel, MRO personnel, obviously very little is left for the for transforming the whole thing. So I think at each place, I can give you specific examples, but I will leave it to the specialists who are going to talk today as to how the production line, assembly line can be modernized, what all technologies can go there, and how other systems, whether it is digitizing your manuals and whether use of VR and things like that in your training programs, all these I think they will talk about. I will only say that the final outcome of introducing technology into the MRO domain, in my opinion, should ultimately be that using various tools of evaluation and assessment, we maintainers should be in a position to hand over a kind of a tool to the commander by means of which he's in a position to assess the system effectiveness or the force effectiveness of a formation or a unit. And the day a formation commander is in a position before the commencement of an operation to decide, okay, out of these 3 regiments which I have in the armored brigade, I should use Regiment A in the initial phase 1 of the operations, or I should use Regiment C in phase 1 of the operations, and these are my reasons. I think that is the time the actual, the impact of using technology into the MRO domain will get established. And the day you can do that, I think thereafter you will find that nobody will say, okay, why the MRO system should not be modernized. I'm sure in the Air Force and Navy there are little different things, because obviously their operational environment is a little different, where they always feel the need that yes, we have to pay a little attention. But certainly in the Army there's a lot which can be done, and I'm sure our esteemed speakers will be able to throw light on that. So that's all what I have.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, gentlemen. In case you have heard him deliberately, you would have found that he has touched on a very, very wider and important issues to include, unless we understand and make the commanders understand the operational connect of the equipment, we shall fail in all subsequent things. He also thereafter brought out that as against the L1 mode of procurement of the equipment, we have to look at life cycle cost, and probably then the budgeting will be done in a manner that at each stage whatever support is needed by the equipment is provided. He also highlighted as to how the system effectiveness has to be maintained, and there are a huge challenges if we have to use technologically, including the budget as such. So therefore, now I invite General Kapil Aggarwal, who has been the ex-DGME, has been into and out of each and every facet of land forces equipment in detail, and he has been a great scholar and scholar warrior, really speaking in all domains. And today he shall be speaking his mind on the land forces related equipment, wherein what are the scope of technology giving us the solutions in the MRO domain, and what are the challenges, how much we can move, and in case we have to move to the full gear, what others things are required to be done. So over to you, General Aggarwal, sir, for your deliberation on the subject.
Thank you, General Ashok, and good evening, viewers. General N.B. Singh has set up the deliberations on the subject of reimagining MRO for defense realistically, leveraging technology beautifully. And all I will endeavor to do is to take the topic further forward. As we are aware, over the last 2 decades, militaries the world over have been swept by a revolution in military affairs called RMA, which is predicated by the rapid advances in technology, which have altered the doctrines and tactics of war fighting. And this transformation has gathered further steam with the lessons learned from the one-year-old Russia-Ukraine conflict. Technology has also led to revolution in logistics, involving supply chains and military inventories. However, 2 decades, or should I say decades, have passed by. A generation of technology has passed by without touching the military MRO, at least in the Indian context. The only change has been repeated rounds of manpower optimization with an objective to improve the teeth to tail ratio. Even the committee of experts, also called Shikatkar Committee, they ended up only optimizing manpower with its other recommendations, including corporatization, yet to gain traction. The in-house initiatives for modernization and technology insertion in the MRO setup haven't found adequate support. Meanwhile, the problems of MRO have got exacerbated and will now need to be tackled on a war footing if the defense forces have to achieve equipment readiness desired for operations. The urgency also stems from a couple of major triggers which have emerged over the last few years, which, when analyzed, will make it clear that now is the time for transformative changes in MRO. Incremental changes will not suffice. So what are these triggers? The first impulse is the defense budget itself, which General N.B. Singh and General Ashok had also mentioned. While in absolute figures, the defense budget keeps hitting new highs every year, yet as a percentage of GDP, it is in a secular decline over the last 2 decades and more. From a figure of 3.5% of GDP once upon a time, it is down to almost 1.4% of GDP, that is excluding pensions. It implies that in real terms, lesser and lesser financial resources are available for defense. It is accepted that the capital budget needs a fillip, and the government is now aptly focusing on modernization of forces, thus increasing the capital expenditure while limiting the revenue budget. The corollary of this is that the pay and pension component, which is part of the revenue budget, being an inelastic component, there will be severe compression in resources available for operational maintenance of forces. Clearly, the brunt will be borne by the budget allocated for MRO, thus impinging adversely on procurement of requisite spares, components, assemblies, etc. So, with this continuous declining availability of financial resources foreseeable in future, a complete think or rethink on the MRO setup is imperative now, so that warlike equipment readiness of forces is not compromised. The next trigger for requirement of transformative change is the Agnipath scheme of recruitment introduced by the government for the defense forces last year. Now, if the annual intake of Agniveers for the 3 services remains 92,000, as is the case presently, it will lead to a gradual reduction in overall strength of the forces. This may stabilize after 20 years, and as per the quantitative model formulated by me, the combined strength of defense forces in 2046 will be approximately 8.28 lakh. That is almost half of the present strength, unless annual intake is increased. So, assuming that the annual intake remains the same, there will be significant optimization all across the board. And it is reasonable to infer that the manpower engaged in MRO will also get paid proportionately. The moot question is, can the existing setup of MRO function effectively with drastically reduced manpower, or will it require a total rethink? Together, the significant cuts in MRO budget as well as MRO manpower present a challenge, a very difficult challenge. And it calls for transformative changes in the MRO domain. I feel the existing setup has to be remodeled or maybe even discarded, and a new construct, a new lean and mean structure tailored to the needs of Defense Forces 2050 has to be imagined and gradually implemented over the next 20 years. Technology insertion in military MRO for ensuring a resource-efficient system will be a sine qua non. However, it has to be planned realistically, as cutting-edge technology involves heavy upfront costs, which government, unlike the private sector, cannot afford, given the budgetary terms of reference. So what could be this new MRO system which needs to be put into place? The existing legacy MRO system in defense is characterized by a manpower-intensive echeloned system of repair, limited automation, little modernization, inadequate overall capability, with perennial shortages of manpower, spares, assemblies, modules, etc. With the fresh major constraints we just spoke of, it will have to be totally restructured if the inevitable deterioration in overall equipment readiness of the forces in future has to be checked. The theory of constraints makes it imperative that an altogether new MRO system is designed around these twin constraints, as incremental changes are no longer adequate. Accordingly, I have figured out a few tenets, in fact 10 of them, which I will now briefly enumerate. The first being a separate tri-services MRO computer network. We'll all agree that automation is the key when any organization has to do more with less manpower. A pan-India secure tri-services MRO network can be the backbone of the new system. It is proposed for warlike equipment only. Civil end-use equipment like vehicles can be excluded so that the focus is firmly on readiness of war-fighting assets. Why tri-services character? Because it will help in pooling skills, infrastructure, and capacities for equipment used by more than one service. This tri-services network can be suitably segmented into separate services and further into equipment verticals. And of course, a secure system is of paramount importance. We can, of course, base it on a distributed database with blockchain technology, with top-of-the-line crypto algorithms. The second tenet I'm going to talk is about it being a warlike equipment-centric system. The MRO system will be centered around warlike equipment, and equipment readiness will be the mantra, and optimum mission reliability will be the objective. Each equipment is proposed to have a designated operator whose bounden duty it will be to key in the equipment status into the MRO network, either on a daily basis or as and when the status changes. At the central level, there can be an analytics module hooked onto this MRO network and a specialist analytics team which can keep a tab on equipment readiness and mission reliability of various category of equipment. They will be responsible for preempting problem areas and tendering advice. With more tech-savvy soldiers, as it is being inducted and retained through the Agnipath scheme, it will be possible to finally implement the user repair concept. For any assistance required in repairs, the operator of the equipment will be able to reach out to the equipment specialist on a helpline, riding on the MRO network, and utilize remote diagnostics. For training on any new modifications, technicalities, there will be provision for extended reality, artificial intelligence-based chatbots, and digital twins for major equipment. It is anticipated that this system will be more cost-effective, enable focused use of equipment specialists, and have higher user satisfaction. Having spoken of the light and field repair echelons, now I shift to the base echelon or the D-level repair. Here, I would like to suggest greenfield private sector projects for augmenting capability of base repair overall or recapitalization of weapon systems or platforms. As we are aware, there is a perennial, ever-increasing backlog of overall of major war-fighting equipment, which has a direct bearing on combat potential of forces. In the simplest analysis, the national capability for D-level repair needs to be enhanced, since the existing base workshops, base repair depots, dockyards cannot liquidate the backlog with existing capacities, even if requisite assemblies modules are made available. Even the defense PSUs have their capacity and resource constraints. Financial crunch prevents the expansion of capacities of the defense industrial complex in the government sector. Thus, I feel the only rational alternative is to encourage private industry to establish greenfield projects in order to augment national capacity of overall or D-level repairs in various equipment domains. Although the industry does not have ready expertise in overall of complex weapon systems and platforms, yet they have the flexibility of speedily entering into collaboration with foreign OEMs, training, technology transfer, and procurement of requisite spares. Ultimately, the aim should be to have a healthy mix of intrinsic in-house defense capability and private sector enterprise, so that under no circumstances war requirements are compromised, while ensuring most efficient utilization of limited financial resources. The next point is on the manufacture or indigenization of spares or modules by private industry. Availability of components of weapons equipment of foreign origin is a major constraint in existing capacity utilization. The defense PSUs responsible for supply chain of such spares have developed a vendor ecosystem in addition to their intrinsic capacities, but they are still unable to meet the demand. Many items have still to be imported, which causes outgo of foreign exchange as well as time penalty. In recent years, government has encouraged private sector and MSMEs to meet this shortfall. However, for giving a mega boost through indigenization and manufacture of such assemblies or modules, much more needs to be done, including separate procedures in the defense acquisition system, especially for revenue procurements. I've already spoken of a little more in detail on this topic in a different forum. Modernization of MRO infrastructure. Repeated attempts in the past to modernize the MRO infrastructure have met with limited success due to resource crunch and the consequent lower priority being accorded. However, it needs to be realized that beyond a point, antiquated setup has an adverse impact on output as well as quality and is counterproductive. The argument is only for outcome-based modernization of MRO infrastructure in the initial phase and not straight away aiming for the latest technology, like let's say IoT-based sensors or AI for predictive maintenance, which has very high upfront costs, especially for pan-India deployment, which the government can ill afford. For the same reason, even introduction of ERP-based systems may be planned only for the central analytic module and in subsequent phases for the balance of the repair echelons. Next, I come to the inventory support by logisticians. While the three services have made progress in recent years in computerizing the inventory control system, the same needs to be reconfigured in consonance with the tenets of the new MRO system. Primarily, I feel there has to be paradigm shift in three dimensions. Firstly, they have to change to a push system, shifting the onus of delivery, wherein the requisite items based on a demand originating on the computerized network are delivered directly to the airbase or ship or unit. Secondly, the speed of delivery for at least the critical items which are available could be fixed, say 48 hours, except remote areas. And all available means of conveyance, including private couriers and drones, could be used in future. Thirdly, the supply chains have to be configured for non-linear, non-hierarchical modes of operation based on the most economic model. Given these three terms of reference, the logistician should be asked to propose a reorganized warehousing and inventory control system, which will feed the new MRO system. The implementation of this reorganized setup can concurrently run with the execution of this transformed MRO system and should be planned to be completed, let's say, within a decade. My last point is on the establishment of MRO hubs for D-level and factory repairs. For all major weapon systems, equipment or rotables with state-of-the-art proprietary technology in services, tri-services MRO hubs for D-level or factory repair need to be established. This planning should be an integral part of defense acquisition procedure. The objective being to eliminate a need for sending the items to foreign OEM, reduce expenditure and turnaround time, fill the engineering voids, and give a fillip to technology transfer. The tri-services nature, whenever applicable, will help economies of scale and efficient use of resources. These hubs can be established by foreign OEMs, that is for proprietary technology for major equipment. They can even be established by DPSUs or private industry for respective equipments. They may even be established by DPSUs or private sector in collaboration with the foreign OEM. Now, coming to the way forward of this new reimagined MRO system, leveraging technology realistically, the significant impending compression of financial and manpower resources for the defense MRO vertical will be a double whammy for the equipment readiness and mission reliability of weapon systems equipment. It is quite evident that if the present levels of equipment readiness have to be sustained, existing MRO systems have to be totally revamped, transformed. Thus, this system has to leverage technology realistically to reduce MRO operational costs significantly while limiting the upfront financial outgo. Automation at all levels will also enable frugal utilization of human resources. The system has to be equipment centric. The tri-services nature will pool human and technical resources, while private sector should augment the capacities of government defense industrial complex. The logisticians will have to simultaneously evolve an efficient warehousing and inventory supply system, conforming to the rigors of the new system. I feel there is a requirement of constituting a committee of MRO subject matter experts in defense, which has to define the broad contours of this new MRO system, reimagined on the terms of reference of overall drastic reduction in resources over next 2 decades, while retaining or enhancing existing equipment readiness and mission reliability levels. This committee could co-opt a suitable civilian MRO automation expert, while being tasked to formulate an implementation roadmap over the next 2 decades. Almost simultaneously, there will be a requirement of constituting another committee of logisticians for designing a new warehousing and inventory supply chain, which will support this new MRO system. This committee will have an MRO subject matter expert and should be tasked to evolve an automated system based on push model and 48 hours spares delivery. It is envisaged that with the successful implementation of these transformative changes, a new lean and mean organization will emerge towards MRO Defense 2050. To conclude, the only prognosis for the MRO in defense is reimagine, redefine, and then re-engineer. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, General Aggarwal. Gentlemen, you just heard an excellent expose on the MRO matter. And if you really see and deliberate on the content covered by the general officer, he has firstly acknowledged that the MRO field is one where we have not really taken technology on board as it has evolved, while it has touched other segments, but MRO somehow has not imbibed it to that very extent. He has also highlighted that we cannot afford to move in the arithmetical progression. We have to move fast in geometric progression and take multiple measures. And the best part of his talk has been, as against trying to indicate that the budget should be increased, the ideal conditions should be achieved, he has tried to really see within the current constraints how we can still do a lot. While we may disagree on certain counts, it always happens with fresh ideas. But I think he has charted an actionable roadmap in the MRO domain, wherein technology can be really used for larger good. And thank you very much, General Aggarwal. And now we move on to the Air Force issue. While the MRO per se or the equipment per se remains important for all the three services, but I think in case of Air Force, it is much more sensitive. But the matter states that while we may have, may have some leverage in the precision parameters when we are handling the land forces equipment, that kind of luxury is not available when we are dealing with the Air Force equipment, especially that is what is airborne. And therefore, probably the much more higher bar of MRO and technological excellence has to be looked into in the Air Force equipment. We are privileged today to have Air Vice Marshal Rajiv Gandotra, who has served at the apex level in Air Force headquarters, and he has also looked after the maintenance of entire Western Air Command. A very, very thorough professional on matters maintenance, which each facet of Air Force, and we are privileged today to hear him on those related issues. So now I invite Air Vice Marshal Rajiv Gandotra sir to lay out your thoughts on technological support to the Air Force aspect, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, I will just cover the issues from the Air Force perspective. As you said very rightly, our focus is safety. Flight safety is paramount, and that is what is imbibed right from the day one we are in the Air Force. And from the maintenance, point of view, we are at par. Or our importance is at par with the operations, because you are doing operational maintenance. So you're part of the operational team at the O level point of view. What we need to do, and every airborne equipment, every airborne nut, bolt, LRU has got a life. Everything has got a life, and life is being monitored every moment. And these lives are given by the OEMs, manufacturers, and they are given in terms of the logbook. If anything meets those kind of hours, of 100 hours means 100 hours done and withdraw that equipment, aircraft will not fly. If it is to do 200 hours of the servicing, it has to be withdrawn. So that is the basis of all the operations, that anytime the life is not to exceed even 1 hour. There are laid on the instruments, then how you can extend the life, even that's given. So if we see last about 40 years or so, 40 to 50 years, the way the maintenance of the aircraft is done, it remains same. It is not changed. It is just like O level, I level, and the depot level maintenance. Now, I was just thinking that how do we plug all this? How do we get, because of the technology now it's available. So one of the things which I read through the literature is the blockchain management. So how do we use the blockchain? Blockchain, what is that various blocks are available to us, and we network them, we chain them. So, but then one has to start from the OEM's point of view. Design, development, production, all the people have to be blocked. They have to be each block. And then the operations and the maintenance has to be chained together. So in case this blockchain management has to work, it is like drawing money from the bank. You just draw 1,000 rupees and it is shown all over. It goes into the various files and the ledgers. So here you fly 1 hour and it should go to everyone's account that the component has flown. All the components have flown 1 hour, and how the inventory is to be managed, how the maintenance to be done, servicing to be done, and also. So to my mind, ultimately blockchain management in aviation will happen, but when it will happen, that's what is a very, very important question. And it's one concept which must come. To my mind, it must come, so that the transparency from manufacturing to the usage to the maintenance remains, and anybody can see how the things move from one to the other. And from the maintenance point of view, what we do, that O level and I level, one of the important parameters which we are seeing happening all over the world is the drones being used for the inspection of the aircraft. So if we have drones technology with us, then you can launch the drones, they'll do the entire inspection, and then you can clear the aircraft for flying. But then again, for anything doing on the aircraft, you need regulatory or the clearances, so that it is authorized to do this work. Now, anything to be done on the aircraft, whichever procedure we follow, needs to be authorized. So there's another thing, area in like doing maintenance through the drones on the aircraft is one area which one can look at, and to my mind, it will come. The few of the airlines are doing it right now. They're wide-bodied, huge aircraft. They are being done, but they are being authorized by the OEM. The training of the operators, because there have been instances when the drones have also done the damage to the airframe of the aircraft. So you need the operators who are fully trained, and they operate those drones very, very smoothly the way it is to be done. The other technology which we can use in the Air Force right now is the robots. So robotics, basically for the handling of armaments and the heavy equipment which are there, which is repeat kind of work. One more area which I found very interesting was the usage of VR and AR. virtual reality and the augmented reality for training of our people, especially emergency procedures which are there. And I'm told that Rolls-Royce and some other concerns are doing training for engines. Engines, how do you maintain the engines, aero engines especially. So that's one area which is excellent source of giving the training to the people. So I think one could look at this AR and VR modules as well. One important thing which I saw in the open domain was formation of smart hangars. Now, the smart hangars is one hangars which you have a lot of IoT going around. You can manage a lot of things together automatically, reducing the manpower. Now we know in the future the manning constraints will remain, and they are so now. So that's one issue where the smart hangarage can come. We can think getting various things linked up together, and they work together towards getting the smart hangars in place. Future, to my mind, is having all these things automated, because the manning constraints will remain, and the performance of the airborne all the platforms has to happen. Of course, automation has happened in the aircraft also. Many things have happened. We are moving ahead, but the technology which is available in the market needs to be dovetailed into the operations and the maintenance of the service. And to my mind, sky is the limit. There is we need to only drop what we want immediately, short term, medium term, and the long term absorption of the technology into the services. Yep. And there's no end to what all we can do
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, AVM Rajiv sir. Gentlemen, you just heard as to how the flight safety and related issues become very, very important in the Air Force. We were fortunate that he has named certain technologies like blockchain, IoT, and others, including the smart hangars, as to how that can handle the current challenges within the Air Force, especially when there is a HR constraint all over, including in the Air Force. And now we will be moving to concluding part of our this webinar. But I am tempted to seek 2-3 line comments from our patron General NB Singh before I request General Matharu to give the closing remarks. General NB sir, last 2-3 concluding punch lines, sir. Yes.
Well, I think the punchlines I gave in the initial portion of my talk.
Yes.
Now I think I can only say that yes, a lot of good ideas have been thrown in, and there is enormous amount of the things which can be done to inject technology into the MRO domain. All I like to end with is that it is the job of we maintainers to first, clear the cobwebs which are within us, develop clarity, and as I said, the point which was brought out by Rajiv, that in Air Force and Navy, the focus first is on safety. Why? Because if the platform is not there, you can't prosecute your missions. Now, same I will say is true for the land system also. I mean, imagine you carry out your classical breakout and aiming to move, 70, 80, 90 kilometers on desert, and you find that 60% of your force is stuck. Some of them on this side of the IB and half of them on the other side. What is the force ratio you will have at the so-called, progression area or whatever they call it? There will be nothing, and you will be ending up getting badly mauled. The way the Russian tanks they faced this whole situation around Kyiv. So I think earlier we used to only talk about it, nobody listened, but now you have got videos with which you can, stress upon these points. And once you explain these things, then you will find, because all this requires resource, and as Kapil has brought out, resource will remain a main issue, whether it is your financial resource or the personal resource. These will remain a problem for the next 25, 30, 40 years. So if they will remain a problem, then we have to now do some out of box thinking and find out as to how exactly can we convince the guy sitting there who is controlling the purse to loosen it and give you also a part of that cake. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I shall invite General Matharu, sir, who has been DGIS and Commandant MCME and a very well-known person amongst all of us and the entire fraternity. And he is the actually the man behind this idea of MRO Digest Forums.com and host of other activities which are being undertaken by this platform. So, sir, I will now request you to give the closing remarks for concluding this session, sir. General Matharu, sir.
Thank you very much, General Ashok, and a special thanks to all our very, very esteemed speakers, whom I know personally and holds in very high regard. And what I would say is that, as we have said in byline on our forum, that there is a lot of discourse needed, because only through that, I believe that we will be able to come out with effective and optimal solutions, like General NB just said, an out-of-box sort of thinking, because the problems are complex. But within that, you will find that there is a certain amount of solutions emerging, even during where there are overlapping of an agreement of ideas. So I believe that wars are won by the correct and effective utilization of our technical edge. So we cannot sit and relax. We have to surmount any, especially a policy issue which is coming in our way of implementing technology. That must be done. And to start with, for example, I suggest that, as was also alluded to in the talks, that we have got certain technical resources. For example, we have got HR resources. We have got immense capacity to build spares within our country. I believe that if we make good data standards, these simple things can lead to huge results. For example, if every program written on HR has the same fields, and if every program written in national standards are used for the spares, then what happens is then we get a matrix of different software which is being used in a variety of places, and these softwares will start talking to each other. Because when you send an information from one to another through API, where the problem happens is the lack of standard data. I think that's a very simple thing which can be worked on. And then we have already now in our fleets which we are using, civilian fleets, you have this wonderful health management system. It is available. We are all knowing people sitting in a different country can know what is the state of their car. So this is a simple step. And then we come to the visibility of data. And I believe here that this is important because in the hinterland, we have got high bandwidth. We are now leading in so many ways. And but when we go into the forward areas, we lose bandwidth. And whatever little communication is available is in very little bandwidth is available for, and it is used for very warlike resources. It cannot be let out. But the best part of this whole thing is that the vehicle system is doing all the work sitting in the vehicle, and what it is putting out is just a few numbers which can be easily carried down any radio or anywhere easily, and the major work can happen where the numbers are received. So we can easily build, I feel, within the national capacity systems which will I have used this word in the past, gracefully degrade. So if you are able to gracefully degrade a system as we go forward, then you have got something immense. And we have got Brigadier YVR Vijay's excellent talk on how he did this, and he turned around the Suzlon system, which is there on our YouTube. And if that could, he gives out in great detail how with even lack of technology he was able to do it. I do believe that especially in the present day, technology is the answer to a large number of problems which we face, and we will be able to do that. And for that, I suggest that if you look at a large number of speakers have mentioned that we look at the policy. And in the policy, we have to look at it that what part of the policy is preventing from technology to prevail. We are having this huge strength in our country, and if a policy is coming in the way of our using that strength, then that policy needs to be re-looked at. And I am sure that the wonderful people we have in our forum will certainly, write about it and talk about it. And certainly there are a lot of good people who will pick it up and things will start happening. That's all I have to say. And thanks to everybody, and Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, Jal Matharu sir, for bringing out important inputs in form of closing words. Gentlemen, today we have had this webinar on a very, very important subject. A lot of things and ideas have been thrown up. We have realized that technology per se gives a lot of options, but it also comes with a lot of challenges. The need to change the ecosystem, the need to change in the policy formulations, the need to change the cyber security connects, and absolutely the apex level of the defense forces need to understand the importance of equipment in the war fighting, which has been amply demonstrated in the Russia-Ukraine war. I think today we are at that part of time in history. In case we cannot convince the our apex leadership on importance of equipment and MRO now, probably that time will not come our way in future, and we will be losing a lot of opportunities and challenges. So with that note, we come to the close of today's session. We will revert back to you with another subject in due course of time. Besides the webinars, the forum has a number of dialogues, the monologues, the snippets, and we will be also expanding ourselves based on the guidance and support of you all in number of other activities for the larger good of the nation and the defense forces in particular. With that note, thank you very much. Jai Hind.